Here we go, another 25-minute interview with the devs, it looks like, on the next big DLC for Total Warhammer 3. I am putting my elbows on the desk, which is a bad idea because it's not a very firm or stable desk, and so it's causing the webcam to shake, so camera might have been shaking for a minute there. I will try to remember not to put my elbows on the desk if I can help it. Now, what exactly... I've not been spoiled as to anything that goes on in this video except that I saw a YouTube short in passing while I was getting to this spot. My subscriptions didn't click on this video. I did see a little YouTube short showing the Slaughter Brute. I didn't click on it, but the thumbnail showed the Slaughter Brute. And so I guess I'm spoiled on that, but I think I've said in like every video they've released about this, I predicted that the Slaughter Brute was coming. As a matter of fact, they might have announced that the Slaughter Brute was coming. So that's probably not that big of a spoiler. Let's go ahead and start with the video, because I assume there's going to be a lot of talking that I'm not terribly interested in. So I'll talk over it and I don't care.
And I am once again sat down with some of the lovely development team.
Now, ideally, I should be louder than the developers here. Just in case, let me lower the volume. So now I should definitely be louder than them.
Everybody knows Rich.
Hello everyone. Yeah, I'm Rich. I'm the game director. I look after the entirety of the Total War Warhammer trilogy.
Josh, a new face.
And now we've got in the middle there, so it looks like some miniatures of some units that are already in the game. I can see the Rogue Idol, the Thunder Horn. Is it Thunder Horn? Oh, I'm having a brain fart here. No, the Thunder Tusk is the one that's coming. It's the ice-themed one that has two ogres on the back. The Stone Horn. The Stone Horn. Good lord, it's been too long since I've played this game.
Director on Warhammer 3 DLC, and I've worked on various bits of Total War games in the past.
I assume these guys aren't saying anything particularly important for what I would be talking about here, so I'm talking over them. If they say anything important, then that'd be really silly of me, wouldn't it?
Thanks for being here with us today. Like before,
and we've got in the background there the art for this DLC.
So, Rich, do you want to give us a little
Goldfug, Skulltaker, and
we're into the thick of it. So I think last time we said that we were
Gorbad? Yeah, Gorbad.
into the iteration period. So we're still in that. We're still playing the game. We're still looking at what we need to improve and change. And I think she wanted like solve some of the puzzles. So that's what we're still focused on: fixing some bugs, making changes around that. And I'm sure Chris will tell you a little bit more about the audio side of that as well.
Yeah, our team are very, very busy. We're flat out at the moment, so all the amazing work that the character artists and animators and VFX artists...
I hope they did not, at some point while I was talking over them, say when the DLC... if the DLC's release has been delayed.
Just help bring the world of and characters from Warhammer Total War to life.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, we'll look a bit more into that a bit later on. Is there anything new that we can reveal today about the factions, like some new units or some bits you've been working on that you'd like to talk about today? I mean, Josh, if we pass over to you, maybe if you want to talk about the ogres, if there's anything you can reveal to us today about what's coming with them.
Oh, absolutely. We could start off with the Paymaster. Quite an interesting unit because we all know that the ogres love their meat, but there's also one other thing that they absolutely love, and that's their gold. And the Paymaster sort of serves to be...
Is the Paymaster their new lord? Because the ogres already have both of the lords they're supposed to have in tabletop. They only had the Slaughtermaster and the Tyrant. Let's let him talk.
That reminder in the battle that if he dies, or if you're not performing well enough in battle, you're not getting paid. So he'll sort of fulfill that support role that the ogres don't necessarily have in combat, and will specialise in primarily enhancing a battle unit's capabilities in combat.
You've been doing audio for Paymaster, I assume, as well. So, is there anything you can tell us about that? How's that been?
Yeah, so whenever we're looking at a unit,
is he a lord or hero?
About what's something unique about them, or some characteristic we want to bring to life with the sound. And so the sound design team have done a really good job. Bringing out, you'll hear sort of gold and chains and, all clinking around. So it really brings out his characteristics. Yeah, he does like gold. Yeah, he's a big fan of the money. So yeah, that's just helps characterize him a little bit and bring him to life. Yeah.
I think his little Noblar likes it as well. That sits on his shoulder or up by the chest or something.
Does,
yeah.
What else is coming with the ogres? There's got to be more that you can tell us.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I think people will really like is the pigback riders.
Oh.
It's such an absurd...
Did I predict that? It's definitely been predicted by many people that there was going to be one unit from the Noblar Horde's army list, and if there was going to be one unit from the Noblar Horde's army list, it was going to be the Pigback Riders, because that's the most remarkable unit on that army list. Curious to see how Crave Assembly will balance them.
Unit when you think of
That's to say, to make them interesting. Not that I think they would be particularly overpowered, though. They could end up being, who knows.
like when you've got this vast, diverse world where you have giants, demons, and all sorts of monstrosities, and then you've got two Noblars piggybacking on each other. They're a fun unit. They're going to specialise as sort of a early anti-large infantry for the ogres. Very well coordinated as well, as you can imagine for well, individuals such as them on the battlefield.
Yeah.
They'll be a bit difficult to hit, but they'll be well worth the cost and well recruitment in combat. And the other thing I would like to talk about in regards to them is they'll have a regiment of renown.
Nice.
These guys, they're even more absurd. They they have ventured into Bretonia, spent a bit of time there, and sort of enhanced their, let's say, jousting skills. So they'll be bringing...
I do appreciate visually unique regiments of renown. It's interesting that it's an anti-large infantry.
Yeah, before I haven't seen the pictures yet, but I've already got an image of my mind of what that's going to look like. So I'm looking forward to that.
They are super cool. We're really excited by them. Elite.
I guess, really, the ogres for anti-large, they don't get anti-large until... Are Iron Guts anti-large? Because Man-Eaters with great weapons are anti-large, and I know Iron Guts are another ogre great weapon unit, but I don't remember whether or not they count as anti-large. Because for Minotaurs and Fimir both, the great weapon monstrous infantry are anti-large. But if memory serves, it's not applied universally, it's not applied across the board. There are monstrous infantry units with great weapons in the game that are not anti-large. So I don't remember if the Iron Guts were the ones that broke that trend or not. Either which way, even if Iron Guts are anti-large, that's still, I guess the ogres do have somewhat of a lack of cheap anti-large. Yeah, I guess that fills a hole in the roster.
Elite premium ogre cavalry.
While we're on the subject of ogres, what's been your kind of highlight of working on it so far with this DLC? Like, have you got any favourite units or bits or mechanics that?
Before they move on too much, I am still very curious about whether the Paymaster Ogre is a Lord or hero. Because, like I said, Lord would make a lot of sense because they don't have any more on the tabletop. But for heroes on the tabletop, the ogres also had the Bruiser, and the Bruiser is not until Warhammer 3. At the same time, Crave Assembly has been consciously, I believe they've been vocal about this before, have been consciously trying to avoid having more heroes that are just melee beat sticks and nothing more elegant than that. And my memory is that the Bruiser, the Ogre Bruiser, isn't any more elegant than that. He's just a melee beat stick. Though I never played the tabletop and I didn't inspect the rules too intently, so I could be wrong. So, did they, rather than adapting something from the tabletop, did they just make up a unit wholesale to try and avoid having another melee beat stick hero? I'm curious. I gotta say, if they did make up a new unit instead of going with something from the tabletop, that would bother me a little bit.
Coming into it that you're...
Though there is a really good Ogre Bruiser mod out there, so come to think of it, I actually wouldn't mind if that Ogre Bruiser mod could still operate just fine.
That you've enjoyed working on most?
Oh boy, they've all been honestly a blast to work on. Our artists and animators have done a fantastic job bringing them all to life. One unit in particular which has gotten me is the Eshin Man-Eater. That's another regiment of renown we're going to be bringing in. And that guy is, well, he spent time with the Skaven, and he has picked up a few...
Skaven and not Nippon. They've got Ninja Man-Eaters, but they spent time with the Skaven and not Nippon. I mean, they have to say Skaven and not Nippon, because otherwise fans would get an idea in their heads, but that is a little bit sad that, at least to me, the idea of the Ninja Man-Eater was always somewhat to show even, like, that the Ogre Man-Eaters had been to places that the tabletop had never covered before. That's how well-traveled they are. But, and I also just like the idea of Warhammer Japan. I think Nippon is a cool idea. But, considering Crave Assembly can't really push the boundaries past where they are now, Cathay was as far as they're going to get to push it. And it's been said so by people at Crave Assembly themselves. The main writer, whose name escapes me, Andy something, I think, but I can't remember. Oh. I hope it is. His name is Andy, because if I can only remember one name and it's wrong, that'd be really stupid. But when Prophet of Sotek Loremaster of Sotek, Loremaster of Sotek and Great Book of Grudges interviewed the lead writer for Crave Assembly, he explicitly said, Cathay is pretty well as far as we're going to get to go. Games Workshop, generally speaking, does not like opening the door on secrets in their given universes. Generally speaking, what was a secret in the 90s is probably going to stay a secret into the future. So, yeah, Nippon ain't happening, and it's understandable that Crave Assembly doesn't want to get people's hopes up, because in the past they've included Easter eggs referencing the halflings or the Amazons, and people would see these references and go, oh my god, they're adding halflings, they're adding Amazons with the next DLC. They aren't. It's a cute little way of referencing and world building, but people can't have nice things, right? So, there you go.
Stealthy and sneaky skills from Skaven, and you're going to be bringing that kind of unit into the battlefield. Imagine this large ogre who's probably the worst character in the room in regards to stealth, but he still manages to pull it off in combat somehow.
Impressive. Yeah.
For anyone at home, if you're not sure what we're referring to, that's the ninja-looking man-eater ogre. So yeah, he looks really cool, and he's like a pseudo hero, isn't he, Josh?
Yeah.
Looks like the miniature.
Him, it's just one. It's not a unit
Oh.
of them. So yeah, special guy to play around with in battle.
Absolutely. We don't usually do units, for regiment renowns like that at least, but that's part of what makes him unique.
Is there anything else you can tell us, like any abilities or anything to kind of shout about that are coming with the ogres?
Yeah, one thing in particular is for Golfag. It's an ability called Deadeye. But in this case, since Golfag's one of the more oldest accomplished ogres, he's also been through a lot, survived a lot as well. So during that time, you tend to pick up a lot of skills and proficiencies. In this case, Golfag's learned how to use the pistol to wear down and snipe people from a distance. So the player will be able to pick any target, well not any target, any character they want, and if they want to wear him down, maybe take a pop shot or even finish him off as they're routing, well, Golfag will be able to deliver that's for sure.
Let's have a look at...
I assume that's a magic missile spell.
Let's not.
Why not?
Let's have a look at Orcs and Goblins. Rich, you're going to tell us a bit.
Yeah.
Revealing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot about corn recently, so I guess that's why we're not talking about now.
I got my orders, I got my things the wrong way round.
But yeah, Orcs and Goblins, there's some cool stuff coming. You might notice on the table, got a few spider riders down there. And there's a big reason around that. We're going to be doing Snagler Grobspit. He's going to be your legendary hero. So like we mentioned last time with Gorbad, that he's kind of a master of all the different,
I want more forest goblin stuff. Please let there be more forest goblin stuff in this DLC. I want more forest goblin stuff. I'm glad that they're getting anything at all. That's more love than they tend to get usually. But I'm glad to hear about this, and I want more. I want more. Monstrous spider riders, please. Monstrous cavalry, please.
Orcs and goblins and trolls and everything that makes up that their roster. This is now the forest goblins that are going to be coming to the party in Snagler. If you don't know too much about Snagler, he's an 8th edition character. He's a forest goblin that rides around a big old giant spider. We've actually had his regiment of renown, his boys, if you like, the Death Creepers, in since
2016.
Crikey, what was it? Not Warden the Paunch, way back. King the Warlord, so like really old school. So he's been hiding out somewhere in the Drakwild, and we finally caught him, and now we're sticking him in the game. And as you might imagine, for a forest goblin, he's all about poison. So you can expect some skills and some buffs and abilities all around that, which accentuates.
What about the generic lord and hero, though?
But also his.
I mean, I assume they're not revealing the whole contents of the DLC right now. They gotta save something for the trailer.
Looking forward to seeing him rock up.
If there will be a trailer, all the marketing for this DLC has been these guys talking.
Introducing a new hero, so that's going to be the Night Goblin Big Boss. And this hero is going to be all about, again, accentuating things around squigs. So as you've seen in the past, we've introduced the Colossal Squig.
The Night Goblins already had a hero in the Night Goblin Shaman, didn't they? I mean, I find this annoying for the idea of building themed armies, but greenskins have always been a rough one to try and build themed armies for. Because, realistically speaking, if you try to build an entirely forced goblin army, you don't really get to have a hero. You can have a goblin big boss mounted on a spider, but he's very obviously like a plains wolf riding kind of goblin that you've just slapped onto a spider instead. So that annoys me a little bit. We're not getting a forced goblin hero, but the greenskins have been made this way since the beginning. It's one of the reasons why I don't like to play them too much. But it's just the way it is. They're built to be playing not a monoculture army, but to play mixed cultural armies.
And you know, the other squigs that we've already got in the game. What else have we got? We've got loads more. Black Orcs. So we're doing Black Orcs with shields. Something that I know a lot of you have asked for a long amount of time. So they're going to be coming in as a new unit. They've got these really big, scrappy shields with the, you know, colourful sort of faces on them.
Is that going to be one of the 5 DLC units, or is that going to be a free LC unit? I don't really care either which way, but there's probably a lot of fans that will be upset if they try to sell Black Orcs with shields while they've been giving the other unit variants away for free.
Tough as nails, and they're going to be joining the fray as a new unit as a part of the DLC.
Let's take a look at Khorne. Josh, I think you're going to tell us a bit more about some of the units that are coming, some new ones that we can reveal today.
Yeah, so one we can reveal right now is the Lord, the Blood Speaker. Completely new for Khorne. We all know what Khorne's about.
They had to make something up for both Khorne's Lord and Hero. He's out of stuff. For units, he's got some of the end time stuff, and he's got the Slaughter Proof. But for Lord and Hero, they just had to make shit up. Because for Demon-wise, he's already got more than he had, because I don't think there was ever a Lord-level Bloodletter, generically. Of course, there's Skulltaker, but I don't think there's ever a generic Bloodletter Lord, and when Warhammer 3 launched, it included the Exalted Bloodletter as a Lord type instead of a Hero type, where it used to be a hero. And for the Mortals, as soon as Champions of Chaos came out, Khorne had already hit the peak of what he had, which was just Lords of Khorne and Exalted Heroes of Khorne. Khorne doesn't have wizards. So, it's cool to see this, though. Very much, like, these guys look very much still like they could be Norskins or Kurgan instead of proper Warriors of Chaos. I like that, especially if you want to build a Khorne army that's more heavy on Marauders and not so heavy on Warriors. I like that, and plus I like that I can tell these guys are going to be more of a support Lord, which is a way to diversify Khorne, because with Khorne, the issue you run into is so often that because of how hard they go into his theme of just being Mr. Aggressive War God, Blood God, Slaughter God, that his pretty well his entire army is just melee infantry, melee monsters, melee cavalry. And unlike vampire counts, he doesn't have the wizards or the weird corpse carts so much to support him. He has the altars, but the altars haven't been very good. I'm hoping the altars get better, and I'm hoping these guys turn out to be really good. Well, actually, the altars may be really good. I don't have that much experience with them, but generally speaking, when you're building a Khorne army in campaign, you tend to go straight for face smacking.
About the fighting, killing for the skulls, the blood and gore and all that. The Blood Speaker introduces a new sort of role for him. So, support role, specialises in buffing friendly units around him. But he also encompasses the best of Khorne, which, as I've just stated, fighting everything. So this is a character you could easily have enhance your units in combat just by just getting him stuck in, and he'll be durable for that. That's for sure.
Any others?
Well, we've got Zangors, Pestigors, and now we have Khorngors.
Oh!
And, oh boy.
Okay, I like the armors on these guys. They're really neat. The only thing that I see that bugs me a little bit is that it's mentioned in the lore that Khorngors have more canine features that look more like dogs or wolves to fit in with Khorne, how Khorne tends to have a dog theme going on. And they didn't go for that here, though to be honest, I get it. I always thought that the Khorngors being very dog-themed kind of led to weird mixed visual messaging. Considering Warhammer Fantasy lore mentions that the Beastmen look like all different kinds of animals. But when you look at the miniatures and the art, the Beastmen always just look like goats, cows, sheep. That's about it. And so it always bothered me that the art and the miniatures never reflected the lore for the dogs. So I figured it had to be one way or the other. Either there had to be more animals in the Beastman's mix, or, just make the Korngors look like everybody else to a certain degree. And this, in a sense, this isn't surprising because the Zongors don't look like birds. Though the Zongors not looking like birds kind of had to be a necessity of just Games Workshop's oversight, because Games Workshop doesn't want any overlap between Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar. Honestly, on a certain level, we should all be glad that demons exist in the game at all, because I imagine Games Workshop did not appreciate that, showing demons in Warhammer Fantasy, even though they were there, just because, the demons are not in Warhammer the Old World on the tabletop now, because Games Workshop is trying to dig in harder on separating the licenses and making it so they don't overlap, and everybody just thinks of Warhammer as the Space Marine game. So, with all that said, while there was a tinge of disappointment that these guys aren't going to have that dog Beastman look, because there could be something visually interesting there, more than anything else, I tend to get it. I get it, and I think that this will make more sense in the long run. If the Zongors looked like birds, I absolutely would have said that these Korngors should look like dogs. But the Zongors don't look like birds, they look like regular Beastmen, but blue. So, the Korngors should also look like regular Beastmen, but red.
They're a really tough unit, to say the least. They'll have a anti-large sort of role within the actual roster, so sort of mid. So you can choose in between the Chaos Warriors with help.
Okay. Anti-large. Khorne already gets Chaos Warriors with halberds. The anti-large part is actually going to be more important for the Beastmen army. Because Zongors are kind of, with their shields, built to be a cycle-charging type of unit. Pestigors are fairly tanky, but more than anything else, their great weapons give them anti-large. But for Khorne... not anti-large, excuse me, anti-armor. But for Korngors being anti-large, that's another big impact for the Beastmen as an army. Because it means you're going to have access to another good unit of infantry that has anti-large properties. So, if the Slongors come around from Slaanesh and they have another additional property, then that's going to give the Beastmen actually a really strong infantry game just for sheer diversity of units. And the ability to cover so many threats and attack in so many ways. Yeah, this is a really good... I mean, the Beastmen have been, for the last year or so, just getting loads and loads of little buffs just from the rest of Chaos getting buffs, and Beastmen get to enjoy little bits from all of them, and also from Kislev, weird as it was. So I like the Beastmen. I especially like the state the Beastmen have been in for the last couple of years, especially now that they're not so monstrously OP as they were at the end of Warhammer 2. So I'm glad to see the Beastmen get more content, and I'm specifically glad to see the Beastmen get more content that encourages them to... that not encourages them, that gives them more the feeling of being a Chaos faction and allowing the Beastmen to have mono-god type stuff, allowing the Beastmen to pick favorite gods. I think Norska could benefit from that a lot as well. But I've always disliked the ideas that Games Workshop pitched that the Chaos gods did not pick Beastmen, the Beastmen did not pick Chaos gods because the Beastmen were bottom of the barrel. I never liked the idea that the Beastmen were bottom of the barrel altogether, but I really didn't like the idea that you couldn't build god-focused Beastmen armies, and I'm glad we're going against that.
Or with the Korngors, but one thing that sets the Korngors apart is they have the best qualities of a Gore unit from the Beastmen roster. So they'll have abilities such as Primal Fury, Frenzy, and of course, as Khorne is ever so watching combat, if they fall below his expectations, they will certainly get a buff that will make sure that when they kill, they're doing it right.
Khorne sounds like it would be quite a fun one to do audio for. Has there been any kind of highlights of that process that you want to talk about, Chris?
Yeah, Steve. I think as soon as we saw the roster for Khorne, I think it got our team pretty excited, and I know that the Slaughter Brute got one of our team members particularly excited. He's actually a metal singer in a band, and I think it was like a match made in heaven, really. So he wanted to lend his vocal skills. It's quite terrifying, actually, what he can do playing like. And
so the Slaughter Brute is going to be voiced by an actual human.
Without a doubt, the angriest sounding creature on the battlefield at the moment. So yeah, I was just reviewing it this morning with the team, and it's starting to sound really good.
Looks good. Oh, that's neat. He drags its hand along the ground.
you know, we looked at abilities for ogres. Is there any for Khorne, for Skull Taker, that you can tell us about?
Yeah, so he'll have his Cloak of Skulls ability. You'll have various means of enhancing it on the campaign side, but on the battle side, Skull Taker's a character you'll want to send against other.
This is gonna be really petty, but I gotta admit, the way that this guy, like, closes his eyes really hard when he talks gets on my nerves. I don't know why, but the facial language of that bugs me. I get, and like I'm trying to focus on what he's saying. I'm trying not to judge him for it, but it's getting on my nerves real bad when he talks. I'm sorry.
Legendary lords and lord characters.
Sorry to anyone who does talk that way. I'm sure you have your reasons, but
Dueling.
it's bugging me.
Skulls will sort of enhance his defensive capabilities. In combat, providing he's got lots and lots of kills, his defensive stats will be progressively buffed. So this is a character which you'll send against other characters, ideally with these stats enhanced. So you could get the best out of him and make him even more durable. And let's just say the opposing side will have a really tough time against him.
So are those buffs enhanced by the amount of skulls he's taken, essentially?
Oh yes. Oh yes, you'll want to get as many as you can to max them out.
Little fact about the Cloak of Skulls. As soon as we saw the unit art for that, like I said to the team, I want to hear those skulls. Like, it's such a unique cape.
That's very, very morbid, Chris.
It is a little bit. What's probably a bit more.
Skulltaker getting rewarded for killing loads and loads of units does bug me a little bit, because when you look at his lore, really, he seems like he should be an anti-lord or anti-hero guy. Excuse me. He seems to me like he should be really a duelist character. And to me, that seems like that would be a good way to differentiate Skulltaker from the other Khorne stuff. Because Khorne, in general, most of Khorne's units like to get a lot of kills and plow through a lot of cheap infantry. Khorne, the wet dream of most Khorne units is to plunge into a crowd of Skaven slaves. So it does bug me a little bit that Skulltaker's doesn't seem to be more of a duelist, but I get it. Especially with the amount of skulls he's got on his back. Like, I just kind of figured those were the skulls of all the people he dueled and killed, but I can see where the visual language for a lot of people would be that he's a crowd killer instead. So,
More disturbing is when one of our team members said, "I got you sorted. Don't worry. I can get some bones, genuine bones." I didn't ask too many questions other than
you don't, do you, when that kind of statement comes out?
Other than they were procured by humane means, so that's fine. But when you get up close to the Skulltaker on the battlefield and you hear his cape, flowing around, you'll hear real bones, on there, which is a bit gross, but it's pretty cool. And so yeah.
that is pretty cool.
Humane means. There's no further questions. Obviously, with all this paid content as well, we also have the free stuff that comes, like the rebalancing, the patching, the bug fixes, the FLC, that sort of stuff. Is there anything coming as part of Update 6.0 that you can talk about?
You betcha, yeah. The team's been working really hard on loads of stuff behind the scenes on that. So let's start with the greenskins. So the greenskins are getting an update to the scrap system that we introduced in Warhammer 2 for War in the Paunch. So there's going to be some UI and UX changes there to just help the flow, make it feel a bit easier, get some of those nice upgrades that the orcs and goblins need for battle. So that should be a fun one. Now for the ogres, oh Steve, it's an ogre haul.
I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more substantial for the greenskins. I'm sure that wasn't the complete total of everything that was getting changed. The scrap system, though, always struck me as a really odd system for the greenskins to have. I mean, it's a little bit of a unique identity from the others that they can individually customize units. But to me, that always kind of struck me as an odd thing. For one thing, for the orcs in Warhammer 40k, scrap is part of their lore, that they loot and collect the stuff of the other races and they build their own stuff out of it. That was never so much of a thing in Warhammer Fantasy. So that always struck me as odd. It felt like a problem that I think the greenskins in general have had in Warhammer Fantasy, where people don't want them to be the Warhammer Fantasy greenskins. They want them to be the Warhammer 40k orcs. They want to be orc-centered, a singular monolithic culture, and it should be about scrap and being dumb as rocks. And the Warhammer Fantasy greenskins aren't usually that interesting, to be honest. It's the Warhammer 40k orcs. And usually when Warhammer Fantasy green skins are interesting, it's the goblins that are cool and interesting. Warhammer Fantasy orcs are kind of lame, barring the savage orcs and to a lesser degree the black orcs. Which may be a controversial thing for me to say. But the night goblins and forest goblins, they're both cool, visually interesting, and very distinctive in a lot of ways. But I've always felt Warhammer Fantasy orcs were kind of lame. And I don't think trying to ham-fist them into being more like Warhammer 40k's orcs is necessarily the way to go about it. Though that could be controversial to say. More than that, I was hoping for a more substantive change to greenskin gameplay that would encourage them to, I don't know, have more of a unique gameplay cycle than simply win battles, and as a reward for winning battles, you get to win more battles. I mean, when you oversimplify things, pretty well every race is designed to play like that. But the greenskins don't have very much, there's not as much of a veil over that. So, it is what it is, I suppose. Now let's go back to stupid puns about ogres.
So there's all sorts of stuff happening there. We're going to be having some updates to the Great Moor and the offerings there. But one I quite like is also what Josh was talking about earlier. So with the Ogre Paymaster, our new Lord, all the Ogre Lords are going to get big names now. So yeah, it's not just...
Wait! He said the Paymaster is a new lord. Okay, so the new hero is probably the Brewster then. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that the Paymaster will be a lord. That's going to be different from the Slaughtermaster and the Tyrant, and I like that. Giving the Paymaster more of not only a support theme and gameplay, but the Paymaster having more of a theme of not just mercenary work, but perhaps being in so much as mercenary work and trying to get money and interaction with the other races, presumably to get money from them via mercenary work. There's almost a degree there of showing how the ogres... This is one thing that's always interested me about the ogres as a race. Is that they're the one race you can see in Warhammer Fantasy that they seem to be changing. A lot of things in Warhammer Fantasy had kind of gotten static by the time of the end times. And when you look over their histories, their timeline charts, they'd been as such for quite a while. Like, the youngest nation in the old world in Warhammer Fantasy is Kislev. Kislev is the newest nation. And it's like 500 years old. And the Ungolics had been there. No, it's like 1,000 years old. Kislev is old. And it's still younger than Bretonnia or the Empire or the Southern Realms. So it's kind of in Warhammer Fantasy's nature that they're covering rather long stints of time leading up to the end times were kind of very static. The ogres, however, at least under Greasus Goldtooth, seemed to be advancing. They were kind of civilizing. They were interacting with other cultures more. They were learning. They were figuring out that the best way to wealth and to food is not necessarily just killing people and taking their stuff, but getting them to pay you to do things for them. And I always thought that was interesting, that they seem to be progressing in some sense. And the Paymaster can almost be seen as part of that, though I'm probably overthinking it. I'm likely overthinking it.
It's reserved to our legendary lords of the past, so that's a nice one for them. And then Khorne. Khorne's got a big one. Khorne's got a great one. They've got something called the Skull Throne. All their legendary lords are going to get access to this new panel, which will feature a variety of different timed buffs. You're going to be accumulating through battles skulls, and of course...
So the Skull Throne mechanic is being changed. I did think the Skull Throne mechanic was an odd mechanic before. Though it's funny to see that they're more or less just now giving all of the Khorne lords the old Tannoan sacrificial offerings mechanic. Though a lot of people don't like Tannoan sacrificial offerings. I always thought it was a fine mechanic. Though a bit OP when you find out just how good a lot of the followers it offers are. Because some of those are bonkers.
Once you've got your skulls, you're going to be spending them in this feature. So you're going to be doing all sorts of things like getting army abilities or spreading Khorne corruption. And as you progressively spend the skulls there, you're going to progress up the tower and then get to some of the big juicy buffs at the end. So lots of skulls and lots of bones, Chris. The bone man over there, indeed.
More skulls for the Skull Throne.
Not sure I want that particular reputation. It's okay.
So yeah, we've mentioned in the past that the FLC content that's coming with this is going to be for Khorne.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the powers that be have given us permission to say who it is.
I don't know why you're looking at me.
Rich, are you ready? Take it away, Chris.
This time around, our new legendary lord, free legendary lord, will be Arbol, and he is a pretty exciting character to work with because his thing is he wants to fight the biggest, baddest things on the battlefield. So, yeah, we wanted to make.
There's a lot of legendary lords that they have. The issue is there's a lot of legendary lords and a lot of the big named characters in Warhammer Fantasy. Their main gimmick is they seek out big threats and fight them. That goes for Arbol, that goes for Skulltaker, that goes for Wulfric, that goes for probably several more characters I can't even name off the top of my head right now. And I think I said before when they were talking about Skulltaker being, it goes for pretty well all greenskins, come to think of it. But I remember when they said in a previous dev chat that for Skulltaker they were aiming for a mechanic that would encourage him to seek out big fights. I said at that time, watching that video, I paused the video and said, I would like them to retroactively give that mechanic to Wulfric. Because it makes sense for Wulfric. That's part of his gimmick as Wulfric the Wanderer. He's wandering the world, seeking out the foes that Chaos tells him to kill. So it's going to be really odd if that mechanic goes for both Skulltaker and Arbol, and also they retroactively backport it to Wulfric. Which it makes me think they won't. I don't know what Wulfric's gimmick will be then, whenever they get around to overhauling Norska, reworking Norska. But anyways, here you go, Arbol the Undefeated, whose campaign should end the moment you take a single loss because he's no longer undefeated. Go figure.
Sure that he sounded, mean, mighty, and just giving it his all. So the order team, the dialogue team did a great job in really channeling that characteristic of him.
Definitely a very different take to Skulltaker. So I think between him and
I gotta say, Arbol the Undefeated, I get that it's neat because he's a Chaos Warrior legendary lord for Khorne. Khorne's only other mortal legendary lord was Valkia, who for one thing was considered a Warriors of Chaos lord rather than a Khorne lord. But also, she's not really mortal anymore. Games Workshop has waffled back and forth on whether or not she's a demon. But I appreciate that with Arbol, we're getting a mortal Khorne lord, legendary lord. But I gotta admit, I've not liked Arbol as an option for quite some time now. Because to me, his lore is really lame. His lore is that he doesn't lose. He wins every fight he's in. That lore falls apart when you put him in a tabletop game or a video game, where logically he has to lose at any given point. Otherwise, why would you play anyone other than Arbol the Undefeated? Yeah. Anyway, it may sound like I'm moaning and bitching a bunch. No matter what, I wasn't going to be as enthusiastic for this DLC as really any others, because Khorne and Greenskins, neither of them are really my races that I like to play. I like Ogres. I like Ogres quite a bit, and I've liked everything I've seen for Ogres. And I've liked a lot of the units that they're adding. But Khorne and Greenskins have never been my jam. They're probably among my lowest ranked for races that I like to play in Total War Warhammer. So, yeah, there's never going to be that much enthusiasm coming out of me.
And Scarbrand, you got three pretty great, Khorne legendary lords here to play with. And as Chris said, Arbol's all going to be about taking on these biggest battles for his feature called the Wrath of Khorne. So he's trying to do all the things in the eyes of Khorne himself, to be that great champion. And yeah, we're playing around with ideas, which was playing to his lore as well. So if you dig deep on that, and if you hear about what happens to him if he wasn't to succeed, well, we've got some ideas around that. Let's just
Okay, that's good. He gets punished for losing.
To 100, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, can you believe it?
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing achievement. When we first started way back, and many of us have been working on the series for quite some time now, I don't think in our wildest dreams we'd get to that number. We knew there was lots to make, but yeah, it's quite a moment.
Chris, let's talk a little bit more about audio and how all of that comes together. So what's your process, I guess, from like conceptualization of a DLC?
They say is Arbol the Undefeated going to be the 100th Legendary Lord? I thought they said the 100th Legendary Lord was going to be someone really special. Again, I don't mean to just be negative here, but Arbol the Undefeated is, I would say, one of the lamer, less important Warhammer Fantasy characters. I mean, I wasn't expecting Nagash, because my god, he would require a change to so much of how the game works. But I was kind of figuring someone bigger than Arbol. So, yeah, that's a little weird. But you can tell with this DLC that they weren't planning on this for this to be the way things would go in the long term. They had clearly planned for this DLC to be a Slaanesh DLC, not a Khorne DLC. On some level, I think this DLC is somewhat still the result of trying to correct over the sheer backlash the Shadows of Change got. Slaanesh was never going to be as popular of a pick as Khorne. Slaanesh was the least popular of the Chaos Gods, both with Games Workshop and with players. Whereas Khorne is probably going to be the most popular on most fronts. Nurgle definitely has a very, very big fan base. Nurgle definitely has a very vocal fan base. But Khorne probably still comes out on top, because at the end of the day, the God of War in a war-based game is going to be popular. That's just how it is. So, this DLC coming in as a very sudden pivot to try and go for a crowd pleaser probably messed with what their plans for that 100th Legendary Lord. So, though, of course, here I am, I'm just a regular dude, so I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and it could be, in 10 years from now, one of these devs actually tells the real story, and I'm completely dead wrong. Or they could say the story tomorrow, and I could be completely dead wrong. I'm probably dead wrong about a lot of stuff. Just how it is.
Through to people hearing it for the first time and things like that.
Well, I think any audio team is quite lucky to work on Total War Warhammer, because it is such a rich world and as such an amazing character. So it is a playground for us to work in. But our process starts really when we see the unit roster come through and we start seeing some of that concept art, and we can start, as our sort of departments, our dialogue department, sound design department, start planning out what we're doing at quite that early phase. So our really talented dialogue team, they sit down with our designers and narrative team, and they work out what we call a character bio. So this is all the characteristics of that unit or lord or whatever it might be, that, how big they are, where they're from.
I don't have anything to say about any of this.
What makes them tick, what their vocal characteristics that we might be expecting. And from that, they go away to a really extensive casting process, and we get lots and lots of talented actors.
Audio is a really important part of a video game, obviously. It's one of the basic senses is hearing. But I don't know very much about game audio, and I'm not very opinionated on it. So
that's the one. That's the match up for those units or that character or that lord.
It's one of those things that I don't think about very much, but most people aren't going to think about audio in most games. It's one of those parts of a dev team that's always going to be underappreciated, really. Because it's such a fundamental part of the experience with any given video game, is the audio. But it's one of those things that just kind of goes in one ear and out the other, especially in a strategy game where you've got so much on your mind.
For the audience to see what we've got this time around. And our sound design team, meanwhile, even before we start getting animations or VFX in, we can look at these unit rosters and go do our research and look up the lore. What we really like doing is seeing where there's something unique or some characteristic we want to bring out with the sound design. And the great thing about Total War is the scale is from the giant battlefield right down to the thing. So with right up close. So we can make sure that their abilities or their projectiles or their weapons, particularly for our lords, sound really big, so the player knows exactly what's going on in the battlefield, or can have an idea of in that chaos that there's something big and bad happening over there. To the right up close to all the character movements. So we break our layers down into footsteps and character armor, so they might have something unique in their armor. Right the way to their vocalizations as well. So we spend a lot of time making sure that all that language of stuff is brought.
How long's left of this video?
It's a really fun process.
You don't really think about that when you're playing the game and you're hearing all the sounds together, that every single one of those sounds has had like a process that has laid it all together.
There's nothing for free in this, unfortunately. We've got to design everything from scratch. But the team have a really, really good time. It's challenging.
I'm not sure if there's anything else in the video they're going to talk about what's actually coming in the next DLC versus just simply talking about behind the scenes process. Which, don't get me wrong, the behind the scenes process is neat and interesting, and I'd like to listen to it like in the background while I'm doing something else, but probably not so important for me to talk about it on recording.
What the animators, what the VFX team do. So we can help bring all their amazing work to life with the sound, and you know, hopefully the players kind of feel that, so it will feel visceral and feels real, and you know, they have a good time doing it. So yeah.
And you've got some weird techniques, haven't you, on the team? Like how you make some of the sounds.
I do think it's important that with how the Total War fan base has in the last couple of years, particularly since Warhammer 3's release, though a little bit before then, gotten very vocal and very pessimistic and very negative. I do think there is really something to... There's some merit, really, to the approach of specifically having videos where they show the devs' faces and hear their voices, rather than being a faceless marketing campaign of just, you know, some announcer going, in a world. Putting faces to the devs, I think, will do a good job of making some people be less oppressively, constantly CA bad. Though there's going to definitely be some people, no matter what. There's some people that could walk up to any of these guys in real life right now and say, CA bad, your game bad, you stink.
It was quite
They went above and beyond. They really did, and they certainly turned some people's stomachs here.
I hope that I'm quite a bit louder than these guys, because it could be kind of a visual, audio cacophony otherwise.
When you're playing and you
Some of the audio stuff, you'll stop and think, how do they make this sound? It's always funny when you see them making the sound, and it's actually like, in my head, it's like, oh, well, maybe they made this sound by a guy coughing while, like, he's punching some putty. No, they make the chewing sound, the chewing and coughing sound, by a guy actually chewing and coughing.
Recording session for our ogres or our corn units, and yeah, the team deliver and don't disappoint. And I think that we usually
Thank you.
Yeah. Steve did one as well this time around.
Rich and I, we've done some of the battle cries and stuff like that. So yeah, we're in there somewhere.
It was good fun, wasn't it?
It was great, although I couldn't speak for a day.
No, I think my voice drops about 2 octaves after that. So everyone thinks I've got some horrendous cold afterwards. But yeah, it's really good fun, and you hear it in the game. You know, you get this, you know, this sound of the army, right? It's, you know, and it's, you know, the team do a great job processing and laying all this stuff together. So
I do think Total War is generally a franchise that's pretty underrated for sound.
3, 2, 1. For the Blackguard! 3, 2, 1. For the Blackguard! Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Slaughter!
That is funny to think that when you click on the guys and they play that sound effect, that's actually a lot of the devs are saying that instead of voice actors. I did not know that. I kind of figured it was voice actors all this time.
That's the bit I love the most, is actually hearing everything all together, and we start balancing everything against each other. So we make sure that the most important sounds are heard on the battlefield, and you know, all the tiny details when the characters get nice and close are audible.
Oh, looks like the rest of this video is going to just be details about audio.
Final polish on everything. Few last-minute feedback notes. You know.
Well, it's going to make for an underwhelming end to this video for me, unless I just sit there and talk about something for like 10 minutes. So that's probably what I'll do.
Yeah. Awesome. It's got to be really rewarding hearing all of that come together into that final product.
Yeah, so much hard work goes into it from you know, from the audit team as well as the wider team, and it's you know, it is the final step that you kind of go, yeah, that's there, we got something good in the bag there.
Just makes it, doesn't it? Just immerses you in into the world.
Well, thank you guys for joining me for this today. It's been really great to give some more information about the next DLC and Update 6.0. We'll be back later this month with the official trailer, as well as some gameplay showcases and things like that on the run-up to release. So once again, Rich, Josh, Chris, thanks again for joining us, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay, so hang on, let's let this proceed a little bit. Nothing. They don't show the release date at any point. But they do include a blooper there at the end. I suppose I'll watch that. Why not? No, it's probably just them laughing. Whatever. Let me talk about the DLC. So if they're coming out with a trailer later this month, then that means that we're going to get the release sometime in December. Crave Assembly, for DLCs, the trailer drops generally 2 weeks to a month ahead of the DLC. I don't remember when the Shadows of Change or Throne of Decay trailers dropped relative to the actual DLC releases, but I remember that back in the days of Warhammer 2, that Tomb Kings of Vampire Coast got their trailers about a month before release, while Lord Pax would get their trailer about 2 weeks. So, unless this DLC is going to be releasing, well, I guess it's only November 5th today, so later this month could mean the middle of the month. In which case, it could be that sometime around like November 15th, the trailer drops, and then the DLC releases in December 15th or 16th or thereabouts. I think it would be fairly unlikely that the DLC would drop too closely to Christmas. But it could, by all means. I don't suppose there's any really rule stopping it. I would be curious if it's only 2 weeks, in which case it could be that the DLC releases in the opening days of December. Though I'm really thinking it's going to be the middle of December here. Either which way, I mean, I'm going to... Like I said, greenskins and corn, neither of them are really my style. At least with the way greenskins tend to be implemented in Warhammer Fantasy. But nonetheless, I am very curious to see more. I assume there's going to be more going on than what they talked about. I mean, that's fairly obvious to say. Otherwise, how would they be able to hype up the DLC in the weeks leading up to it? But, you know, it's... Changes to scrap for greenskins is not going to put my hair on end to make me think, oh my god, give me this DLC now. So, hopefully there's more for the greenskins at the very least. Corn, I'm glad to see that Skulls for the Skull Throne thing. That's a neat way to change the Skulls for the Skull Throne mechanic, which before was kind of an awkward mechanic that you usually felt pretty bad about spending the skulls on. Because skulls, so often when you're playing as Corn, you want to reserve them for building. So Skulls for the Skull Throne felt awkward as a mechanic. I'm glad they're changing that. For the ogres, though, it looked like definitely just all-around cool stuff. I'm definitely very curious to see more. I like the trend with, like, the Blood Screamer or Blood Caller or whatever. Corn Lord. I like the Paymaster Lord for the ogres. I'm curious to see the ogre... I'm not curious to see the ogre hero. That's probably the Bruiser. I'm curious to see the Corn hero. I wonder what the Greenskins Lord will be. Because the Greenskins in-game now already have a plain Orc Lord and a Forest Goblin Lord for all intents and purposes. Wait, was the Night Goblin Great Shaman actually a Lord type instead of a hero type? I think so. Yeah, because it was a Great Shaman instead of a Shaman, right? I could be getting that wrong. In which case, that would probably mean we'd be seeing a Savage Orc Lord, right? Even though he doesn't fit the Gorbad Ironclaw theme. Because that would be the only one left out of the Lord types, is there wouldn't be a Savage Orc Lord. Because the Goblin Great Shaman that exists in the game right now is Forest Goblin styled. He's got spider legs on his back. It's kind of mixed visual messaging, I think intentionally, because he's got the hood. Well, in that case, if he's got the hood, well, the hood to me indicates visually Night Goblins. But was the Night Goblin Shaman a hero then? Oh, no, Night Goblin War Boss. Yes. The Night Goblins have a Shaman hero and a War Boss Lord. What is wrong with me? Yes, and the Night Goblin War Boss Lord rides the Great Cave Squig. Either which way, there is a Night Goblin Lord type and a Night Goblin Hero type. Now there's going to be 2 Night Goblin Hero types. A little bit of that. Why do you get 2 hero... Gee, why do you get 2 hot dogs? But it's, gee, why do you get 2 hero types? But, and I know this seems like a real thing for me to... The real weird thing for me to be stuck on, but it is. I like building themed armies, so it bugs me a little bit that there's not really going to be... I'm still going to have to rely on mods for Forest Goblin armies. Then again, I play with mods all the time anyways. What am I bitching for? Anyways, if I could ramble any further and get further off point, then that'd be really impressive. Either way, I am curious to see what the Greenskins get for a Lord type. I'm imagining it's going to be the Savage Orc Shaman, or Great Shaman. Might not be. Who knows? And I'm curious to see some more of the units, definitely. Noblar Pigback Riders are going to be one of the best units to see in game. I'm really excited to see what animations they get, because Crave Assembly always does a fantastic job with giving funny units like that really funny little cute animations for them to do. I'm also curious to see how they play out in battle, but we'll see about that. So, yeah, I suppose that's the extent of what I've got to say. I'll be talking to you again later this month whenever they upload the trailer. See you then.